change, uncertainty, and confusion. The stories being told are both poses and teasers. Poses that stir our psychic pot of sacred symbols, archetypes and numbers, and teasers to tease from us awareness and understanding. There's yet another Sufi story, because it's been found that the Sufi stories have all three in full measure. So put a fire under your psychic pot with a piece of Marcus's delicious cake and see what we can cook up with another Sufi story. It's a story about an old widow who had an only son who was called Saddique. Now Saddique means truthful, but at an early age Saddique was very shy and introspective, but he grew into a fine young man, a willing worker. But unfortunately, at that time, times were hard, and there was no work to be had for Saddique. His old mother did the best she could to provide sustenance for them. But one day she went to Saddique and she said, "My son, I have nothing left to sell. We have no food in the larder. I do not know what we're going to do." But Saddique said, Mother, I have a plan. I've been to the neighbor and I've borrowed 1 shilling from them. And I have a plan to go to the market and buy from the butcher a lamb's leg, which I will sell for 2 shillings. And that will be the beginning of my business. So the mother, of course, was very delighted that her Saddique was coming forward and standing up. And so this is exactly what he did. He went to the town and he went to the butcher's and he bought a lamb's leg. And he put it on a tray and he carried it around on his head, calling out to people, "Come, come, buy my luscious lamb's leg for 2 shillings. But just then a raven came by and grabbed the lamb's leg from the tray and went flying off. Saddique went running after, "Give me back my lamb's leg, give me back my lamb's leg, you nasty bird." But the bird kept flying on with the lamb's leg dangling out of its mouth. And Saddique ran as fast as he could to try to retrieve it from him. But finally, exhausted, because after all Saddique was malnourished, he was hungry, he ran out of energy. But just then, at that moment, it appeared that the bird dropped the lamb's leg in a well. So Saddique, exhausted, sat down by the well, weeping. "Give me back my lamb's leg, you nasty bird." But just then, there was a tap on the side of the well. Saddique got up and looked, and just at that moment, a hand emerged from the well, and in that hand was a silver pot with a spoon and a crystal bowl. And then a voice said, "Tap the saucepan with the spoon, and you will receive whatever taste you desire." Now Saddique could not believe his eyes or his ears, but he did just as was told, and he tapped the side of the bowl and asked for lamb stew and sherbet. And sure enough, the pot was filled and the bowl was full. He ate his fill and wondered what was going to happen next. But he went back to his mother, told her what had happened, and of course she too was hungry, malnourished. So again they tapped the side of the saucepan, and she asked for her heart's desire, which was fulfilled. They could not believe their luck, because from that time on, not only were their own needs provided, but Saddique was able to open a little kiosk in which he was able to provide to others what it was they desired. Soon became known around town that the best food was to be found at Saddique's kiosk, so people came. But as is the way with these things, of course, now Saddique, having his stomach filled, his mind went to other things, and he thought about getting married. So his mother tried to find suitable maidens for him, but Saddique told her that he had caught sight of the princess of the realm, and he would marry no other than she, otherwise he would live his life celibate. Of course, his mother said to him, "This is a dream. You are just a poor lad, even though we are now living well." But Saddique kept to his dream, and he went on with their business. But one day it came to the ears of the monarch that one amongst his people was poor but now living well. So he decided to go and check out, to really congratulate, because the kudos would come back to him for being a good monarch. So he went to the kiosk and asked Saddique for his heart's desire in food, and it was provided. So of course the king thought to himself, now how has this poor young man, who was poor all his life, all of a sudden become rich in this way, and where is it coming from? So he sent 2 spies to the kiosk to try to find out from Saddique where his wealth was coming from. Now, of course, Saddique kept it a secret, but the spies ingratiated themselves with a helper that Saddique had hired to serve the people who came, and so they were able to elicit from him that Saddique went into a back room when anyone came to the kiosk, and their wishes would be fulfilled. Well, they pried some more and found out that when Saddique went into the back room, he had a pot and a crystal bowl that were perpetually filled. So you can imagine what happened Next, the king demanded that these be purloined, and one day, when Saddique went to open his kiosk, his saucepan, his spoon, and his bowl were gone. He was broken-hearted. He went to his mother. "What are we to do now? We have no more livelihood." But she was a woman of faith and said, "God will provide." But soon it was heard that the king was offering food of anyone's desire. And so, of course, it was found out that indeed it was the king himself who had stolen Saddique's pot and spoon and bowl. But Saddique, of course, was bereft. He went back to the well, and standing at the well again he demanded, "Nasty bird, give me back my pot, my bowl, my spoon. Give me back my lamb leg." But this time, a hand came out of the well, holding a rein, and when Saddique pulled on the rein, it pulled out a donkey fully bridled. And a voice said, "Be careful when you pull this bridle and say, 'Whoa.'" So, indeed, as Saddique was leading away the ass, and he took it back to his house, and he pulled on the bridle and said, "Whoa," the donkey gave out a great fart, and out came 2 gold pieces. So from that time on, of course, Saddique knew exactly what he had to do. Pull on the bridle and say, "Whoa," and out came the gold pieces after that expectoration of the fat. So, of course, Saddique became very rich. But one day he was wanting to go to the communal baths, and it was quite a distance away. So instead of walking, he decided to take and ride his donkey. So when he arrived at the bath, there were a few young boys playing around. And Saddique said to the boys, "Whatever you do, don't pull on this donkey's bridle or say, 'Whoa,' otherwise it will give you a good kick." But of course you know what little boys are like. As soon as Saddique went into the baths, the boys pulled on the bridle, and so the story goes on. But when Saddique came out and rode his donkey back home, took it into the barn and said, pulled on its bridle, and so, well, nothing happened. So he wondered what it was that had occurred. So he made his way back to the bath and, of course, questioned the young boys, who said they didn't know what had gone on, except that the owner of the communal baths had come out and led the donkey away and then brought it back sometime later. So, of course, Saddique knew exactly what had happened. So he went to the communal baths and he demanded from the owner to return his donkey. But, of course, the owner just called some of his minions, and they gave poor Saddique a big beating and sent him on his way. So Saddique again was bereft. What were they to do? Their means of wealth again had been taken away from them. So he went back to the well once again. And again he demanded, "Return to me my lamb's leg, return to me my saucepan and my spoon and my bowl, and return to me my donkey." This time the hand came out of the well with a box and handed it to Saddique and said, the voice, "Inside this box is a stick. Strike one on the other, but be careful that you do so only from a place of truth." So when Saddique went back to his house, he struck on the box, and out of the box came 3 brawny, big soldiers with swords at their sides. And they said, "Tell us what it is that you want us to do." Now Saddique instructed the soldiers to return from whence they came. But then he knew what he had to do. First, he went to the king's palace and he made an ultimatum. "Give me back my saucepan, my spoon, and my bowl. Otherwise, in 3 days, I will declare war on the king." But of course, again, he was beaten and sent away. But after 3 days, he went back to the palace. After striking on the box sometimes, so that he was not alone, he had with him an array of soldiers, all with their swords. Very soon the guards capitulated, as did the king, and his bowl, his saucepan, and his spoon were returned to him. Next, Saddique went to the communal baths and demanded of the owner that he return his donkey. But of course, again, the bath owners slapped him, told him to go away. But soon Saddique again struck his box, and the soldiers appeared and very quickly were able to convince the owner of the baths to return the donkey, which he did. Now we won't go into the lamb leg, but suffice it to say that having returned to him those gifts that he had received, Saddique was able to build himself a grand house. And after doing so, he invited the king to come. And after providing the feast, of course, that was always there from his saucepan, his spoon and his bowl, Saddique was able to seek the hand of the princess, which was readily given. And so he was fulfilled. He had all of those things that would bring richness and provision for life, not only for himself and his mother, but for all others who came. But he had a bride who he loved and adored, and we know how these stories end. They had many children. So it's up to us to provide the fire for our psychic pot. What do the elements, the characters, the archetypes and the symbols in this story represent for us? And when we use that fire to cook up the ingredients, we have understanding and awareness. All stories, every experience gives us the ingredients we need to complete our stories. And when we do, we have the completion of every story, ours and all others. For the moment, these stories, Sufi stories, are specific to the time that we're in. But perhaps by now you will have realized, after all of these years, what this chain of stories brings for us. It's your fire, and your fire alone that will allow you to reach that point of the end of all stories. Now we have a chance in this time of uncertainty, confusion, and change.